Why, hello there. Welcome to Smart Aspirations with Justin Huff. Sit back, chill out, and go on a journey around the world. Around the world. Justin will discuss tales of hope, discovery, and general irreverence with some of the most dynamic personalities in the travel business. Remember, we do cool shit, and so can you.
What's going on, podcast party people? I am here with my good friend, Brooke Berlin from Karoo Consulting. Brooke, say hello to everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Brooke was nice enough to join us today. We're going to try something a little bit different. This is just kind of like a really cool, unstructured, friendly chat. Brooke and I have been traveling during the evil COVID era, and we've both been to Africa and back. I've been to East Africa, specifically Tanzania. Brooke has been, God, all over the place. And I had a brief moment of insecurity regarding my Tanzania trip. But before we get into the ins and outs of our experiences, Brooke, tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and your background, and then we can take it from there.
Okay, will do. Thank you so much for having me, Justin. I'm really thrilled. And I will also say, I think that this is my first podcast, so yes. I'm even more excited.
Yes. Welcome to the fray.
Thank you. So yes, Brooke Berlin, Karoo Consulting. I do business development for entities all across Africa. But this is definitely something that's been a passion of mine for my lifetime. I say I was born an African in America, and I grew up loving Africa. I was drawn to it, but every part of it, I was drawn to the food and to the drumming and the dance and the fashion. I actually studied magazine journalism and cultural anthropology. So at one point in my life, I guess I thought I was going to be writing for National Geographic. And then I just realized I didn't want to ever have to go into an office.
Relatable.
And I didn't want a 9-to-5, and I didn't want 2 weeks vacation. I wanted to be able to travel. So I'll skip a whole bunch of different parts, but basically traveled around the world many times, lived in South Africa for a little bit, came back to the States, met my husband who is from South Africa and was in the business of doing sales and marketing and representation, and eventually helped me get into the space. And so now we work with some really extraordinary properties and suppliers across the continent. And one of the things that Justin and I share and really love too is that, yeah, everyone thinks about Africa and they think of safari and they think of Tanzania where Justin went, or Kenya, where I went. And yet what I love is Senegal and Sudan and all of those really interesting different places. I'll talk to you about Uganda, but I also, instead of just the gorillas, want to talk about the Ik people. I mean, it's like, It's culture. There's so much vibrancy. And that's just a very little slim part of why I love Africa.
Oh, completely. That's perfect. I mean, and Africa, spoiler alert, is a continent. It is not a country. It is just chock full of just all these huge, enormous, diverse. I did like, you'll appreciate this. I did this comparison when I was building the Tanzania part of my website. And if you took the bottom border, the southern border, extreme southern border of Tanzania, and you put it in Miami, the extreme northern border would be in Kentucky, if that sets things into perspective.
Yeah.
That's just Tanzania.
When Johan talks about Madagascar, what stands out to me is he always says that the difference between the top and the bottom of Madagascar is roughly the distance between San Diego and Seattle. People think island, right? But it's like the length of Madagascar is the entire length of the U.S. basically. So there is so much going on there.
Right, it's great. Johan's always good with anecdotes like that. I mean, it's true. But okay, so fast forward through our fun, cool careers until we hit COVID, and we're all kind of not knowing what to expect and everything. But then all of a sudden, countries start opening up, and Tanzania was the first shroud to be lifted. And I was thinking to myself, okay, the migration is happening, during the months, in the river crossing, so to speak, are going to be happening late summer, early fall. I've seen kind of the Great Migration before. I've seen a crossing, but it was like for a day, and I got lucky. I was never there during like peak season. I was like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. and I'm very respectful of all of the rules that have been set in place. It's like, and I was like, I did some math, and I was like, shit, I could do this. And so, yeah, push comes to shove. I bought my ticket. I booked my trip in the itinerary. I was just going to go to Tanzania just for I was just going to Serengeti. I didn't travel extensively. I couldn't get away that long, with obviously commitments as a single father. And then I registered with the State Department with updates and things like that. And I got this email before saying that there's speculation you're going to have to get a COVID test before you go. And I was like, oh shit, here we go. And I knew you knew your stuff, and I was like, okay, who can I talk to about this? So I called Brooke, and do you remember how that conversation went?
Yeah, you were kind of like, I think I have to cancel my trip. And I was like, no, don't cancel your trip. And you were like, well, how did you get yours? And I told you through my health insurance, and you're like, I have the same health insurance, and they won't do it in California because it is state by state still. I mean, everything when it comes to COVID, and keep in mind for people listening to us now, this was back in August. I mean, a lot's changed and continues to change and continues to improve. But as like some of the pioneers, yourself, myself, of doing it before anybody else did, I was sharing experiences, the horror experiences of what I went through, and a couple of other, people that I knew that were going over. And then I finally just said, here's the thing, I think. Basically, we are the pioneers. We are the ones that are going to have to go through the stress. Things might not go right. Flexibility is the key word of travel these days. And once you get there, it's going to be the trip of a lifetime. So let's just keep going over the hurdles, because what is on the other side is, heaven, unlike I think we've ever seen in Africa before with so few people.
It was the smartest thing I've ever done. The inner journalist, I know you studied journalism and everything. It's like the inner journalist wanted that story and wanted that experience, because no matter how many times in the future we try to recreate something like that, it'll never happen. This time next year, assuming everything goes all well, it's going to be full again with people. And not to say that there aren't incredible remote places that you can experience even in peak season, but you mentioned something that really hit me like a ton of bricks in a good way. It was very humbling. I remember when we were going through all of this, you said, now I know what it is like to be a client going to Africa for the first time. Remember that? Thank
you for remembering that. Oh my goodness. This kind of gets to the heart of what I said to you just now. Because I've traveled to 3 destinations, 3 different African countries, I've forgotten about all of the stress. And you're absolutely right, Justin, because even for myself with my trip, and even things that are going on now, flights are being canceled and rerouted. And I flew through Europe, and people weren't certain if I could fly through Europe at that point in time. And I was like, no, I can. And people were telling me I can't. And so I was like, well, what do I not know? And then Kenya was changing their regulations. So I can speak about Kenya, not Tanzania, but you're right. Kenya was changing their protocols on a almost daily basis of who was allowed in and what was needed. And I'm my own travel agent, if you will. I didn't have somebody else, and I was the first person, so I didn't have anybody else that I could say, well, what do you know? And you are spot on. You've brought me back to that moment where you're right. I said, I've traveled throughout Africa for more than a decade, and beyond Africa, I've traveled to some, kind of really interesting, out of the way places too. I'm never afraid of travel. I'm always happy to go where nobody else goes. And you're absolutely right. This was the first time where I said, I totally get how somebody going to Africa for the first time, or the second or the third, how they feel about all of the uncertainties and what if something goes wrong.
Yep.
Totally unrelated to COVID. Thank you for that reminder. Yeah.
Well, yeah. It's like you said, it's just, we've done this for so often, we kind of get desensitized to the process. We're like, a shot. Okay. Who cares? Just get a shot. Some clients are, oh my God, this is like a lot of stuff. I can't just get on a plane and go with a passport. No, it's not like that. But
that's also where, when you said that you checked the CDC, right? I'm going to say 2 things. And this is also very much
State Department, not the CDC.
Sorry, the State Department. You check the State Department, and then of course you've got the CDC. So this is very much a don't do as I do, and half the time don't do as I say. But don't ever check those 2 things. The second you go for, your travel, vaccines, they come out with a book 4 inches sick, and all of a sudden the fear of the unknown is put into everyone. And I have to say also, I mean, the State Department, and not just in the US, because I've been working with some people in Canada and over in Europe as well, just please understand that there is so much more to why governments say what they do than the actual reality on the ground.
I know.
And to your point, you had the most exceptional time in Tanzania, myself in Kenya. I mean, and these are still countries that have warnings out against them.
I know.
Don't just take those two sites and think, oh, I can't go. Talk to the likes of Justin. Like, there's so much more about what is going to happen on the ground than just what government says.
Well, Kenya, case in point, there, I mean, yes, there is dodgy stuff going on the Somali border, but that is light years away of where your safari experience is going to be. But if you still read the State Department's travel warning on Kenya, it'll scare the shit out of you if you don't know what you're talking about. And from what I understand specifically on that one is that, this is brief tangent, I think like the U.S. government tried to put up a military base or something like in Kenya like 20 years ago or something like that. And the Kenyan government said, nope, sorry. And then that's why Tanzania gets like way more preferential treatment than Kenya does in terms of that. But it's, more or less, you just pop across the border and it's fine.
And you're absolutely right, Justin. I mean, I've probably gone to Kenya every single year for at least the past 5 years, and that's one of many destinations in Africa. And again, I mean, I'm going to the likes of Sudan and Burkina Faso, and well, actually, I went to Benin and Togo, just south of Burkina Faso, before it became impossible to go there. But Kenya is one of the safest, most hospitable, most delightful, most amazing countries. And the second you leave Nairobi, and I also like Nairobi, I've spent time there too.
Nairobi.
But the second you leave and you go out to, the Mara ecosystem, or you go out to the Chulu Hills in the south, or you go up to Laikipia, I mean, you are worlds away from everything. And it is so safe. And I'll also add, though, if you were to look at the properties that I work with specifically, which Justin knows about, and you've interviewed Calvin from Cotters, and you know about Old Jogi, the other thing just to really keep in mind is so many of these properties are doing the most incredible conservation work that they have rangers. I mean, traveling through Uganda, we couldn't go into a national park without seeing UWA, the Uganda Wildlife Association. It is so safe in Africa. It really, truly is.
It is. And the only way that you can really experience that or understand and appreciate that is by experiencing it. It's just, there's a lot of hurdles to overcome mentally. But I think that, our experiences right now, and I'm hoping I actually did post a YouTube video of me actually taking the COVID test, that two of those companies that you suggested for me, which was awesome. It was so easy. Oh my God. It was seriously the easiest thing in the world. I'll rent a shameless plug for those videos down there below. But it was the easiest thing in the world. Just another little minor, and now I'm ready to go anywhere. It's not going to be a problem, but I'm curious. So I haven't posted a chat or anything about my experience with Tanzania, but why don't you tell me a little bit about your experience in Kenya? I had tried to go, but I'm from California, and at the time, it's fine now, but at the time they weren't letting anybody in from California. So what was it like?
Definitely, like I said, unnerving, because every single step of the way, something happened where I thought, I'm not going to get on the next flight. I'm not going to get on the next flight. Yeah. Finally got to Nairobi and thought, I'm not going to get through security. So I was, I think, the third person in Kenya from the U.S.
Oh,
not a U.S. citizen, because there were some other people who were citizens who live overseas. But traveling from the U.S. to Kenya, I think I was literally the third person, if maybe not even the second. Oh, so there were so many unknowns. And again, this was August. So getting there was very, very nerve-wracking and very uncertain. Okay. But to your point, those things have changed. We understand now exactly what's needed, and Kenya has been really good about keeping their protocols consistent. So what they required in September, they're requiring in October, they're requiring in November. Yeah. So that aside, because those are all of the details that, we all know what the answers are now about your QR code for your health test and registering, and that's all seamless and easy.
Sure.
Once I got into Kenya, I went up and I spent about 5 nights at Oljogi, which is in Laikipia, and then I spent 8 nights down at Cotters, which is outside of the Mara. And I have to say, what hit me immediately is being in Africa is the healthiest and happiest, the safest and the sanest that I have felt all year.
Seriously.
Because there's so few people and you're in these remote destinations, and those 2 properties specifically, Oljogi is always 100% exclusive. So it was me and the team, you know, on 60,000 acres.
Right.
And then I got down to Cotters, same thing. It was like, you know, I was there with the team, and like no one was, you know, in the villa. A family had just checked out, so there's privacy there, and they're doing private dining, private vehicles, private activities on a private conservancy. So between Kenya and then, you know, the other 2 countries, Zambia and Uganda, what I'll say is I very quickly took my mask off and told everybody around me, if you feel comfortable taking your mask off, please do as well. I knew that all of the staff had been tested, they had been quarantined, they knew what COVID was, but I kept asking, do you know anyone who's been sick in the past 5 months, who's died in the past 5 months?
Yep.
No.
Yep.
The cities are different. Nairobi is different from the Mara. It's different from, you know, the Maasai communities that you still have to drive an hour from Cotters to even get to.
Right.
So very quickly, I realized, you know what I'm going to have to do? I'm going to have my temperature taken every day. I'm going to have to sanitize my hands a little bit more often. But we all agreed we were comfortable. Take the mask off and just go and have an amazing experience.
Yeah.
And I did that. I hiked, I biked, I did sleep outs, I had great food, I saw epic animal viewing. I had one of the most extraordinary cultural experiences of my life when I was at Cotters. So it really is the sort of thing where once you get to Africa and you get on safari, the comfort level of all of a sudden the fresh air, the blue skies, and some of the lowest numbers in the world I'm going to add as well.
Seriously.
You just feel free. And there is a sense of peace, at least for me, the peace, the stillness, the ability to reflect and just get centered again. I did not know how desperately I needed to be in Africa until I got there. And I live in Colorado on 10 acres of beautiful mountainous land. Like, I'm not suffering for outdoor space, but it does not compare to what it feels like to actually touch the earth of Africa and to be out there in the Mara, or any of the other, you know, amazing places that I got to go to in the past couple of months.
What was the amazing cultural experience you alluded to? I'm curious.
So I was incredibly fortunate to be at Cotters while Calvin Cotter was there.
This is a massive plug for Cotters, by the way.
Louise was also there. Like, they, you know, the team was there because Cotters is doing some really wonderful things right now. I mean, more than 100-year history, they always do wonderful things, but they're in the middle of a redesign, and, you know, so the team was there, and they're going even deeper into their conservation platforms and sustainability platforms, and I was happy to be a part of that. So Calvin, who is kind of the mediator of the Maasai, if you will, because of how Cotters works in, you know, lockstep with the Maasai, was invited by one of the Maasai communities to attend an elder ceremony.
Okay.
And so this is basically, you know, we all have rites of passages. I've done a number of rites of passages in my life. It's something that we don't necessarily do in the States as much, but Africa all the time.
Yeah.
So there's a marking of the phases of our life. And what the Maasai do is a marking of men into that elder, you know, kind of wisdom, that elder portion of society. And I think, I mean, first of all, we were the only 2 white people, Calvin and myself. I was one of the only women in the men's circle because of Calvin, because he was the important person and I was there, and he kept being like, film this, photograph that, like, stand over there. And, you know, so I was very much like, you know, just there as the witness. But we were there for the entire day, from the bloodletting and the, you know, very ceremonial killing of the cow, to the skinning of the cow, to the removing of all the meat, to the roasting of the meat, to the eating of the meat, to the women, to the procession, to the drinking, to the after party, to the dancing. I mean, this was like a sun up to sundown. And what I find so fascinating as well, I would say, again, there were probably 200 men and then maybe 300 when we got to the village and you add women and children into it. And not one of them were wearing masks. They were sitting shoulder to shoulder and eating and dancing and hanging out. And then you've got Calvin and myself, like he's with the men eating. And I was like, that's not, like the last thing I can do is get COVID. And like my whole trip would be ruined. And I came home from Kenya and I had a COVID test 2 days, like a day after I arrived, and then I got the results 2 days afterward.
Right.
And it was negative. And I've had 3 other COVID tests since, and they were negative. So the experience was extraordinary because, wow, how lucky am I to be a part of witnessing an elder ceremony and being the only, I would say, tourist. I would never consider Calvin a tourist.
No,
I was a tourist.
I mean,
I'm the only tourist with him and the Maasai for the whole day. I've never had an experience like that before.
I don't think you can ever replicate anything like that either. I mean, how special is that?
I mean, even when I was in the Omo and I was at a bull jumping ceremony, there were still probably 10 to 12 tourists, and that was unique to only have 10 to 12 tourists.
Right.
This, for me to be the only person.
One. Yeah. That's
yeah.
And can I just ask you how amazing it felt to stay that long somewhere?
Yeah, I really truly think that people need to stay longer and really focus on single country trips.
Agreed.
It's stressful right now trying to combine countries, so let's just nix that right away.
Yeah. Totally agree.
But in terms of staying in one place, I think unfortunately Americans have the tick list.
Mm-hmm.
And
definitely.
We think that we're going to see an episode of the BBC in 3 days.
Yeah.
And that's not the case. And I think we also forget that it's not just safari, but it needs to be vacation, especially now. We are so overworked. We're so overstressed. There's so much more going on that to be in one place and to feel happy to just sit and read a book for an afternoon, which I've never done before, or to sleep in one morning, which I was able to do, and to really get to know more of the team and to not have to choose which activities I'm not going to do because I don't have that time. All of those things were really wonderful. But also, I'll go a step further. I wasn't concerned about this, but I can see how some people might be concerned. If you're moving from place to place to place to place, all of a sudden, more planes, more vehicles, more teams, more new people, more new procedures. And I appreciate the procedures that are in place, but I got really tired of having to go through the same kind of check-in process. Let's say in Zambia or Uganda, when I was moving a lot more, I got tired of having to do the same thing. Whereas in Kenya, to stay in one place for the week and to be able to experience everything. I hiked every day. We went biking. I did the canvas baths. And I didn't even scratch the surface of some of the things that they do offer. So, I mean, that's the thing. I think people don't understand. If you choose the right property, they will have so much to do that you want to stay longer. And I say that because I've been to some properties where 2 or 3 nights and you're like, okay, I'm driving the same roads. I've seen the same things.
Same thing, time to go. Yeah.
But the right property, you then all of a sudden just relax and it feels like your island vacation, right? We all want to go somewhere and do nothing for a week. Go to Africa and do nothing for a week while doing everything
under the sun
and supporting community and conservation.
Rejuvenated, relaxed. And to that, the guides, I mean, they really get to know your personality, what you like, what you want to see, how long you want to stay at a sighting. And it's just, I got to say, I mean, in our business, especially from the agent side, when you go somewhere, you're doing one night, 2 nights, 1 night, 2 nights, 1 night. And it's too much.
Yeah.
I'm never going to do something like that again, ever. And
even up at Old Jogi,
Yeah.
For instance, I've been to Old Jogi probably 3 or 4 years in a row for 3 or 4 nights each.
Mhm.
So I'm lucky. I've gotten to stay there for
really
a
good.
substantial period of time. But still, there were things that I had not done before that I could do on this trip.
Right.
Having that time allows for true understanding of a region and being able to focus on all of your passions. And then I want to add one other thing because it just came to mind for me.
Totally.
When we think about like the relaxing, cathartic side of going to Africa as well, I always build in one night at the end of all of my trips where all I do is write.
Oh, okay. Right. That's smart.
Might want to load up their photos, or people who are writers, or people who say, I want a day just to read. Those are the things you never have time for. I promise you never have time for those things when you move around.
Well, with the writing, I mean, you're still living the moment. You're still with that momentum and that energy. The moment you get on a plane and you get back to the States and you're focused on family and normal shit, you lose all of that. Yeah. And that's so important. I've never even thought about that.
Yeah.
Last question before we move on to Zambia. Back to the long stays. What was it like to actually unpack something?
Yeah, because living
out of a duffel for 14 days.
So I'll say, because I do work in travel and I travel a lot, I don't like to live out of a suitcase. And my husband makes fun of the fact that if I'm in a hotel for one night, I still unpack. And he's just
really?
Because I will not allow my life to be one where I am technically living out of a suitcase.
Yeah.
But what I will say is it was really nice to not have to waste time repacking and unpacking and just to be like, okay, I can go out. I felt like I was home.
Yeah.
And there are so many just delicious properties out there. I work with a lot of them, and there's a lot more that have that element of home. Mm-hmm. You feel like you are a part of it.
Right.
And I mean, that to me, just choose a property that treats you like family and makes you feel like you're a part of the family, and like you're not going to ruin something, or I don't like things that are too precious. I say that about myself as well. I'm not precious. I'm not fragile. I'm not going to break. Yeah. And I don't want to be someplace where I can't just put my feet up and feel like this is my home.
Yep, completely. And I just loved, when I was out at Alex Walker's Sarian up in the Serengeti, and
so great.
Oh my God, it was just, it's like you're part of the family. You get to know the staff. You get to know them by, obviously you're interacting with them with their first name. You're walking into the kitchen. Like I had this, I'm going to do a huge plug for the passion fruit cheesecake at Alex Walker's Sarian. Oh my God, this stuff. I have dreams about this passion fruit cheesecake. It's becoming weekly. It's a bit of a problem. And because I can't replicate it. You can't get that fresh passion fruit in the States anywhere. It's impossible. But like just seeing the chefs and how proud they are of this. And we were fortunate enough to have a lovely photo safari guide and his wife on safari with me. But we were both like on two bipolar opposite ends of the Lamaya wedge, and we hardly saw each other. But you just become one with the whole process. And it's just, I remember just taking my stuff out and putting it on the shelves in the bathroom, like, this has never happened before. This is so cool. Oh my God, this is like, this is so great. But it's just incredible. But
I'll add to that, and this will also segue down into Zambia for you. I encourage people to also think about traveling to Africa as though they are just traveling to their home, and making certain things feel like home. So for me on this trip, just, you were talking about the cheesecake, passion fruit cheesecake. So at home, I like my butter coffee in the morning.
There you go.
That's what I make at home. I have one coffee in the morning and that's it. So what I did is I got little travel packets of MCT oil. Okay. And in Kenya, both Old Jogi and Cotters, and then in Zambia, every single property that we went to, I would just call the team over and I'd be like, this is how you make a butter coffee. And they'd bring me in the kitchen and we'd
that's awesome.
And, some had the coconut oil, some just had butter, some were like, it's not salted butter, right? And I was like, no. And so I didn't have to go without the things that make me feel like I'm at home. I will also say I am very loud about what I want to eat. And because I like to eat a lot of salads, very few carbs, a little bit of meat. And I will always speak to the team and just say, this is how I like to eat. This is what I want. Look at the menu, move things around. You can absolutely make anywhere that you stay in Africa feel like home by saying, these are the things that I need. Camps are there to do what you need and to make you feel comfortable and like you were at home. So just never shy away from that.
Yeah,
and yeah, we did the exact same thing in Zambia.
We're happy to do it. I mean, it's not an inconvenience for them at all or anything. But yes, segue to Zambia. Excuse me. I have a friend of mine that was supposed to lead a trip to Zambia that got pushed back. And I was like, why did it get pushed back? And I said, well, we couldn't get the visas. I was like, what are you talking about? And how does that make sense? But in any event, because so you after your Kenya trip, just take me back. So you came back to the States, and then your next trip was Zambia, right?
Yes. Okay. Well, it was Alaska, and then it was Zambia.
You went to Alaska too. You've been so busy. It's been amazing. But okay, we're skipping Alaska for the show. We might be doing Alaska
Zambia
at some point. But Zambia, where did you fly into? How did you get there? What was it like?
Okay, so I live in Colorado, and so I'm Star Alliance. And as much as I would love to fly on some of the airlines that are doing flights through the Middle East, like Qatar and Emirates, that's just not me. So I most often am on United, Lufthansa, and Ethiopian. Yeah. Ethiopian has exceptional lift throughout Africa. They also, while we were in Africa, rolled out a whole kind of travel insurance program that's similar to Emirates, and they treat us very well. So I flew Ethiopian into Lusaka, and then I will say, because you're asking about the visas, Zambia was the same thing. We were the first tourists into Zambia.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
So again, what we're doing is we're discovering all of the things that we need to know to make it seamless and easy for everyone who's following in our footsteps. So we got to the airport, and they did not want to check us in because they said, you have to have a visa.
Yeah.
Said, no, you can get a visa upon arrival. And they said, no, you can't. Oops.
Okay. You're fine.
And I thought I'd turn that off.
No, you're fine.
So they said, no, you can't. We said, yes, we can. No, you can't. Yes, we can. The whole thing. And so we're at the airport, and Johan is trying to take up PDFs from Zambia, and I'm on WhatsApp with our ground handler. Okay. And we finally were able to get everyone to agree that you can, in fact, get a visa upon arrival.
Okay.
And as of right now, you can.
Yeah.
So we were able to do that. We were also able to get a visa upon arrival in Uganda, which we were not certain we were going to be able to.
Okay.
And I did get a visa upon arrival in Kenya, though this week I read that they are going to mandate e-visas starting in January. So the reason I say that again is the conversation Justin and I are having right now, we're having right now. Yeah. Still always check, because things do change.
Right, and this will be posted a week from last Wednesday. So early mid-November and everything. So things can always change, but that's again why you're working with the specialist. And so
exactly.
Yeah, it's just different. You never know what to expect. The old procedures are gone. So you're in Lusaka, Livingston?
Yeah. So we flew into Lusaka, and because travel is just opening up now, certain things that we're used to having available to us aren't available to us. Like, we used to have multiple flights a day, every single day, every single location we wanted to go to. That's not the case.
Right.
It's more limited. Maybe they're flying twice a week, that sort of thing. So we had to stay in Lusaka specifically to wait for the flights to where we wanted to go.
The pro flight.
And that was actually, exactly. The pro flight flights that we took to Livingston to see Vic Falls and to stay there at Tongabeze. And then the flight, we went back to Lusaka and stayed there before we flew out to Mfui to see properties there and back. And then we drove to Kafui, and we also drove down to South Luangwa.
Oh my God.
Most people.
I didn't realize you drove to Kafui. That's cool.
Yeah, we've done a lot of driving.
That would be an adventure. So you drove from Mfui to Kafui?
From Mfui, we flew back to Lusaka.
Okay.
And then we drove to Kafui.
Okay.
And that's the thing, so like right now, if we were to look at what it's like to
throw
go
up a
to
map
Zambia,
for everybody to see the different areas that we're talking about. It's like, we know where it is in our brains, but people are like, what the hell? Mafui, Kafui, what the hell is this?
and people are like, I just hear a lot of oohies.
Oohies, yeah. What the hell is that?
So, when we were there, ProFlight was flying to Mfui on a schedule where you could either be there for 2 nights or 5.
Yeah.
And we could only be there for 2 nights. But every other, again, tourist that I know went for 5. Stay longer. It's not a detriment to have to stay longer in some of these places. I mean, you could spend 2 weeks just in Mfui.
Oh, totally.
Then after our time, we just wanted to see, 2 properties, which were amazing. Mfui Lodge, everybody knows that one because the elephants walk right through, and they just did a huge, beautiful renovation. The Bush Camp Company and Time and Tide's Chinzambo.
Blasted on, yeah.
I love him. Yeah, and Chinzambo, because I like to have a little luxury when I'm in the bush all the time.
Why not? That's the right place to do it.
But then we drove to Kafui, and that's a great drive. It's just 3 hours, and it allows for you to also see some of the community outreach programs that Green Safaris is doing there. And sometimes it makes sense to drive rather than fly, because the flight time plus the drive doesn't cut down on much, and then you're spending all the money on the flight anyway.
Yeah, the flights are expensive.
We're happy to do that.
Okay.
We drove to South Luangwa, which was definitely an adventure. And we did that because the flights weren't yet operating. But just as for instance, Sausage Tree and Potato Bush, they're offering free flights for a 4-night stay. So if you're staying for 4 nights, and you should also stay for 5, 6, or 7, then you get your flight thrown in for free anyway.
Which is huge for Zambia, because a lot of the deterring thing about Zambia can be the expensive flights, and so that's a massive, massive deal for sure.
One of the things that I'll say, so that surprised me, I definitely went to Zambia with a investigative eye, kind of like I did with Kenya. By the time I got to Uganda, I was like, I'm on vacation. But in Zambia, what was really interesting is that I saw many differences in Lusaka from in Nairobi. In Kenya, just as for instance, like everyone was wearing masks. And when we got to Zambia, I kind of was like, this feels a little bit more chill.
Yeah. And
then I realized even though I felt like I was nervous, but that's because I had something to pitch it against, right? I had just seen Kenya, so now I'm in Zambia going, but I'm not seeing the exact same things.
Sure.
They've had even fewer cases of COVID. Like it exists even less in Zambia than it does in Kenya, and even less in Uganda. Uganda is among the top 10 least affected countries in the world.
Wow.
So if you look at all of the African countries, they rank very high in being unaffected.
Unaffected by it.
Unaffected, sorry. And then it just, again, it's like all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, right. Like I'm safe here.
Yeah.
They've got exceptional hospitals. They've all dealt with, infectious diseases before. Like they're ahead of the curve. I've got to say, Africa's ahead of most of the rest of the world in handling disease anyway.
Right.
And then there are so few cases. So it took me a little bit to get comfortable with it being so chill in Zambia. And then I was like, oh yeah, I understand why.
Well, to that point, like in Arusha, it was like, it just wasn't part of what was going on in the world. And people were and it's a city of 1.5 million people, and literally nobody's wearing masks. It was life as usual. It was chilled out. And people are like, it wasn't like wall to wall people everywhere, but people were going about their lives. It was a typical East African capital. Not to the extent of Nairobi. I would assume that, having traveled to both countries, that, Tanzania just generally is a little bit more relaxed. But I was just asking guides everywhere I went. I would ask people if they knew people that were sick, and hospitals are empty. They don't know anybody. And I was like, so what happens if I walk around with a mask, or if you walk around without a mask, or with a mask on? They're like, they think we've got COVID. You're kind of like, I don't want to say shame, but they're going to, kind of back away from you and think that something's wrong. And it's just, that sounds like Zambia was a lot like that as well.
It does among locals, even though, again, every single building we went into, we had our temperature taken and we had to hand sanitize. They're taking it seriously for sure. And I saw people wearing masks, just not the way that I did in Kenya. But what I will say is it kind of kept hitting me through my travels that these countries have been on lockdown and they've done everything that they needed to keep their numbers as low as possible.
Sure.
I kind of feel like we as the traveler need to have the awareness that we are the scary ones. I know everyone's like, I'm afraid to travel because I could get COVID. And I'm like, the thing is, they could get it from us. We are coming from some of the highest rated, countries outside of Africa. And so I took that very, very seriously. I was happy to have my COVID test before going. Sure. I wore my mask on the plane. I did my due diligence. I made sure I was safe. And then it was the conversation of, are you comfortable if I take it off?
Right.
Most of the staff all continued to wear masks. The few times that I saw staff not wearing masks was when we were out on safari in a vehicle in the open air driving, when statistically it's very, very hard, not near impossible. But when I got massages, the masseuse, when we were being served our meals, those sorts of things, the activities, they were all wearing masks, inside at the camps, the staff, and as well they should. They need to keep themselves protected from us travelers.
No, that's an excellent point. And my experience was similar to that too in Tanzania. I mean, every single tourist point, checking in the Arusha airport, flying at the pilots always had masks on and things like that. But once you got out into the country, it just it got a little bit more chilled out. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, within a plane or an enclosed vehicle, you're respectful. If you're inside, you wear your mask, and they will too. If you're going on a walk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. There becomes a line of reason, that's there that sometimes people need to, be wary of. For sure.
I mean, can I tell you, once we got to Uganda, there were definitely times when we were driving, because we did a whole drive around the country too, and we were with the same driver guide the whole time. There were definitely times we would be pulling through town and I, wanted to go into a store and buy a drink or something.
Right.
I started forgetting my mask.
Oh, yeah.
More often than not, I was like, oh, shoot, that's right. I need to get my mask. I mean, I just got so used to not wearing a mask.
Yeah, we're creatures of habit, right? And then you kind of put yourself in that embarrassing situation where I'm totally trying to be respectful. I'm so sorry, I hear you.
I've just never felt more normal. Again, being in Africa and traveling, I've never felt better. They were the best 3 trips and weeks of my entire year. And I cannot just stress enough, it will give you such a break. It will give you a break from everything. And you can work. These properties all have internet, and most of them have little office spaces, or, when we were in Uganda, every single one of the Wild Places properties, they have desks in the rooms. I love it.
Perfect.
So, you can work, you can have your schooling done, you can just relax. I mean, go live there. Just get out. Who wants to sit through North American winter?
Yeah. Oh, God, I know, right?
America in January, February, March.
Yeah. Why would you do that? And it's not rainy season at all. It's perfect. I mean, my favorite time to go to East Africa is that whole period after the holidays, that January through March period. The rains aren't there yet. The tourists aren't there in mass. I mean, they're not going to be there this year anyway. But it's a great time to get the hell out of the States and Canada. Wherever you're coming from, but Europe. But you said this is the best 3 trips that you've taken all year. Uganda wasn't originally on that, was it? You weren't planning on going to Uganda, were you? How did that happen?
I'm like, and I have taken other trips. I don't want people to think, well, she only went to Africa. I did some cool trips in Jan, Feb, March. So these still are the best ones. So we got to Zambia, and throughout that time, again, all of a sudden, and now I was traveling with my husband. So Kenya was just myself. Zambia was Johan and myself. And we both felt so much better. Yeah. We just felt productive and happy and safe and peaceful. All of those adjectives that I've been using that I truly mean. We just felt, okay, this is great. And then it was toward the end of September, and Johannes, I said, is South African, and we have not gone to South Africa this year. We would really like to see his family. We miss our friends there. I work with Swallow in South Africa, so we wanted to get down there. But South Africa was not getting the logistics of going into the country done in time. They had said that they were going to open the borders on the 1st of October, but they didn't say who was going to be allowed in and what that was going to look like. No, I'll tell you, we actually basically spoke to ProFlight because Pro was going to have an inaugural flight from Lusaka to Joburg on the 1st of October. They're starting to do a new route there to make that seamless. And they were like, we're going to get you on it. Yes, we can totally get you down into South Africa. And the time was coming that we had no information. And we now had less than 24 hours to change our flights. I forgot exactly. We're going to say we were supposed to be flying out on September 21st. I'm just pulling a number out there. Okay. So we had one day to change our flights, and South Africa was not a reality. So we got in touch with our friends and, colleagues in Uganda. And literally the email was, we have 24 hours to change our flight. We can be there on the 1st or the 2nd. Are you guys open? Like,
that was it?
Literally.
Oh my God.
In about 20 hours, we had a response that said, change your flights, we'll make it work. Like, just do it. So we changed our flights. It took a lot to figure out, again, the logistics. And this is why single countries stay longer. It's just going to be easier. We were looking at flying through Ethiopia, at flying through Rwanda, at flying through, to all these different places. We finally landed on a Kenya Airways flight through Nairobi into Entebbe. Okay. And they're not flying every single day. So we couldn't arrive on October 1st, but we could arrive on October 2nd. Mm-hmm. We also needed to ensure that we had that time in Lusaka to get our COVID test, because you have to have one before you go into Uganda. Right. So it's great. We just spent another 4 or 5 days in Lusaka, which is a city I love. That's awesome. Moved ourselves into this beautiful suite at latitude 15. And I was like, hotel. Again, I unpacked. We had a little kitchenette. I went to the spa. He went to the gym. We looked at art. And we did work, and I wrote, and we conducted webinars, and we worked. You can work from Africa. You can spend time there and be free. And then we flew up to Uganda, and one other couple arrived before us on the 1st. It was a Mexican couple on their honeymoon. So we were the second.
That's so cool.
First Americans, but second
Americans. There you go.
And then it was just the most incredible experience. 2 weeks of gorillas and chimps and tree climbing lions, and like seeing so much of the country. It was
you guys did like so many things in Uganda that if you go to Uganda, and I'll kind of give a Uganda 101. It's usually, like you said, a driver guide safari, a private driver guided safari all throughout the country. And you start in Entebbe or Kampala, and then you head out to Kibale to do chimp trekking. You head down to do Queen Elizabeth National Park, Ishasha for the tree climbing lions. Then you end up in Bwendi to do your gorilla trekking. And then you either leave by flying back to Entebbe or crossing the border into Rwanda, doing either more gorilla trekking or just going to Kigali, and you're done. You guys, and I'm going to drop an F-bomb on this podcast. So fucking jealous that you guys went up to Murchison and Kidepo. Those two places, I mean, Kidepo specifically, I love Off the Beaten Path. I love remote. Kidepo, and I had, I'm not sure if you ever remember Natalie, rest in peace, from Mountain Travel Sobek, but we had this like contest going on within the Africa department when I was managing that. And I was like, the first one, this is between like several different salespeople. I was like, the first one of you to sell Kidepo gets a steak dinner of your choice wherever you want it. And Natalie won it. God rest her soul. Okay, so I'm going to shut up. Tell me about Kidepo and Murchison. I'm so freaking jealous.
Yeah, so again, in terms of people going, I'm going to move, I think people do always think, I'm going to Uganda for gorillas. And I was like, no, I want to understand what a full 2 weeks plus in this remarkable country is all about. And there are some really interesting places to go. Kidepo last year was rated the second best national park in all of Africa, second only to the Serengeti. So that's got to tell you something.
Yeah.
also one of the most remote national parks in Africa that you can still get to.
Remote,
And
reachable, accessible.
exactly. Because I mean, there are some places that are remote and God help you if you can get there. And then there are places that are remote but accessible.
Yep.
And so what has changed in time, though, is that there is really good airlift around Uganda now.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So that typical just drive around, many people will fly, but because we were so early, there were no scheduled flights. So we did that. I would absolutely tell people to include Kadepo, but to do a flight because it's, I mean, from Kadepo to Kampala was like a 13 to 14 hour drive.
I didn't realize that you drove that.
Yeah, because there weren't flights and we still wanted to get up there.
Yeah.
And same thing from Murchison, it was, you know, again, like another 10-hour drive. So people are going to, like your clients, your guests, they're going to fly. The other nice thing is that the airline within Uganda that most people will use also has a code share because it's actually managed by Kenya Airways. So you've got seamless flights that will get you to and from the Mara, Kadepo, and to Buindi, and to, you know, some other places in Uganda as well. And I love that because, you know, because Cotters has such an affiliation with AWF, Wild Places Africa and the Uganda Safari Co., they have an amazing relationship with AWF as well. Okay. Everything that they're doing is community support and conservation. So I always like to just talk about properties that are putting in those hard yards to really do the work.
Yeah, sure.
And that's what's so important in Kadepo, is that the Wild Places Africa property up there, Apoka, it's like one of the only tourism-oriented properties in this vast park. Now they are turning what was an Idi Amin hotel into a new hotel, but I mean, it's like 120 rooms and you and I would never send anybody there. Yeah, we're all, you know, we're going to send people to Apoka. Yeah. And there are just no other lodges in the national park, the same way that their property in Simliki, which is another amazing destination, there's nowhere else to stay. So you've got these vast bits of land with so few people that you can do incredible safari and walks. In Simliki, you've got some of the best birding. You also have a research project going on with chimps. So like our chimp trek was fantastic. And we did that in Kadepo. Kabali. Sorry, thank you. Kabali. And it was great. But again, to now talk about a real well-rounded experience, we met with researchers that are studying and habituating a totally different like subgrouping of chimps, and like how awesome to be a part of something like that.
My God.
But yeah, I mean,
it's anyone, for sure.
It's just the northern parts. So that's where the ick people are. If you want to do cultural things in Uganda, you really are focusing more up in the Kadepo area and then down along the eastern border, because there's so much kind of crossover similarity between the Maasai and Kenya, and even then some from South Sudan and Sudan, you know, to the northern border.
Right.
And we just didn't actually have the time to go, which is really sad for me because I'm all about culture. And again, we didn't have the time to go. We were still there, you know, 3 nights, and we're out on drives and we're doing all of these other things that if you want to fully enjoy a place and you're going all that way and the flights and just stay longer.
Just stay longer.
It's the same reason in Buindi. I'm going to tell people stay for at least 3 nights, do 2 full days of gorilla trekking. Because if you're going to go all that way for something that could very well be once in a lifetime, don't leave it up to chance that you're going to have an amazing experience the first day. And, you know, the permits are $700. They're half the cost of Rwanda. So if you've got the budget, fantastic. And if not, the gorilla trekking and the properties and the views and that cultural kind of community experience in Buindi, we stayed at Clouds and oh my goodness. I mean, I could stay there for a week.
Clouds is top 3 favorite places in Africa. Clouds of Buindi is basically like an oval. Again, I'll throw a map up there. The top part is Bahoma, and the bottom part is in Karingo. And Clouds Lodge is in Karingo. and I'll jump in with a quick kind of like a shaming story. So we're in Bahama, and I'm with a group, and a great solid group of more or less 5 people in the safari business, and we're sitting there at Gorilla Forest Camp, GFC, and we're talking about because we got to go to Nkaringo, and so our guide was like, you can either sit in the back of the car for 5 hours on a really bouncy road that we have to go to get to where this is, or you can hike through the park. What do you think we did? We hiked through the park. Now,
good. We did that too, but in the opposite direction. It's such a beautiful hike.
It's so gorgeous there. Oh, that whole Albertine Rift mountain range that goes through, it's just lush and green and beautiful. And as you're walking through, I mean, just kids come out from villages to say hi, and it's just like this magical experience. But so we had Uganda wildlife. When you walk, it's a national park, so you've got to walk through with a guide and a gun that has a gun and everything. That's, one's in front and one's in the back just for safety. And so we got halfway. We met at a halfway point, but they communicated wrong and took us to a completely different part of where we were supposed to go. So we had like 10 hours in Wendy hiking around. And this one trail that they got us on was straight up a mountain, no switchbacks. And it was like, I would say the weather was, fine after 5 hours or whatever, but it got a little tedious after the 7th hour of just walking straight uphill for a really long time. Guests will never do that to you. But it made just like everybody was cracking jokes, and we just it made that foot massage and beer at Clouds just that much better.
I totally get that. For me, it was the red wine by the fire.
There you go.
So still just amazing.
Oh,
well, and I'll plug for Clouds and just how exceptional they are is keep in mind, we were in Zambia. Okay. And we were in Zambia at the end of September. I had 4 bathing suits, 2 flip-flops, and like a tank top. And now we randomly decide that we're going to go to Uganda, where we need hiking boots and rain gear, and it's cool.
Gloves and
exactly. Oh my gosh, we actually went to a hardware store in Lusaka to buy the gloves. But Clouds has shoes, gaiters, hiking poles, backpacks, rain gear, and I've got big feet. I'm a size 11. I'm a size 42, and they had boots for me. So well done.
Well done.
You'll plan ahead. Justin's going to give you the packing list and share his experiences, and what you're supposed to take when you go to Uganda. Mm-hmm. But we did not know we were going to Uganda, and I was so happy that they had all of that because it made it that much better for us, for sure. And just like any other wildlife experience, right? I mean, like when you were talking about Tanzania and going to see the crossing, and I kind of made that flippant remark. I mean, I think people think they're going to go and see National Geographic if they're there for 2 or 3 days, and they don't realize it takes a year or 2 to film what you see. It's the same thing with the gorillas and the chimps. When people always say to me, right, what's easier, what's harder, what's better, what's this, what's that. They're wild animals.
Yep.
You're going at different times of year. The weather is going to be different. They might have been startled the night before. It depends on where the fruit is. There's so many
permits for
what family, where you've got permits. I mean, so I don't really truly believe that you can say unequivocally, this is easier, this is harder. It depends on so many factors, but that's why I will say, go now.
Yeah.
Get on a plane immediately. We were the only 2 people that went gorilla trekking, which is unheard of. Usually you cannot get a permit. Yeah. So we paid for our 2 permits and basically had a private trek. We were one of 2 couples, so 2 of 4 people for our chimp treks. Yeah. The sooner you go, the fewer tourists, the more you're going to have a private experience, which means your trek is just going to be easier for you because they're going to go at your pace. They're going to take the trails that work for you.
Yep.
And get porters.
Yeah,
I am
always
so
get porters.
much that person who, like, I don't want people doing for me.
Yeah.
And it's so important to hire porters. It is a part of their local economy. It's like $15,
Right.
even if they're carrying your water bottle, even if they're not carrying anything and they're just having a conversation with you.
Right.
That is a part of their local, economy.
Totally agree with you. It's a vital part of their economy. It's a vital part of local employment, and they enjoy their job. They enjoy interacting with you as much as they can, and it's enriching for them as well. So that's awesome. And
forget too, if you think the trek's going to be difficult for you, or you've got a bad knee or whatever. I mean, I know people that will have someone on either side of them. I mean, you can absolutely go gorilla trekking and have an amazing experience in Uganda now. And Burundi is just so incredible.
And
yet,
right now, to your immediate point, about traveling immediately, you'll never get this back. We will never get this experience back. And I have to hit that, hit that point as hard as I can. I mean, it's just, this is a magical time to be there. And you've got, right now it's November, you've got a good 3 months before the rains start coming in East Africa. And now is the time to go. And then even after that, if you want to plan now for the future, it's just going to be just this remarkably exclusive, private, just meaningful, touching experience that you'll never have back. And I think it's important. So,
and I would also say, right, everyone talks about the rains.
Yeah.
I mean, when we're at home and it rains, is our life over? No.
God, no.
When you're in Africa and it rains, everything comes alive. Like, the green is more green. Maybe that's when you go to the spa or you do the Candace bath. Or, I mean, at Swallow, we had a family that spent the whole afternoon in the stables with the horses because their kids were equestrians. There's still always something to do. And rain is a part of life. Like, we need to have the rain. It doesn't mean that you're going to have a bad time by any stretch. And also keep in mind, no matter what, our environment is changing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've been to East Africa April, May for the past 3 years with very little rain and an amazing experience. And then they've had unseasonable rains at different times of year that are, they're not used to it. So this whole, I don't want to go in the rainy season or green season or off season, whatever people want to call it. I will stand by at any point of the year. Just go to Africa. You're going to have an incredible time. You will have an incredible time no matter what.
And also culturally, rain is good luck in Africa. And has Calvin ever told you the story about his wedding?
He didn't, but I listened to your podcast.
Okay, yeah. Spoiler alert, it rained on his wedding, and in British culture, that's bad luck. In Maasai culture, it's awesome. It's great. It's a party. People start dancing. It's a celebration. So, and again, it's not incessant rain without end. It's very brief, to be honest. So, but listen,
I want to say something else. Sorry, just as we're talking about traveling now, one of the other things that people have said to me so much is, I need to do a flight within the US first. I need a starter flight, or I need to get used to, I'm afraid of the long hauls. Or I think one of the things that's so important to keep in mind is, if you go to a country that requires a COVID test upon arrival, like a Kenya or a Zambia or a Uganda, the reality is every other person on that plane has presented their negative COVID test as well.
COVID test.
So getting out of the US is one thing, but I felt so safe. There's actually articles that are showing you have a higher percentage chance of getting struck by lightning than getting COVID on a test or on a plane.
On a plane, yeah.
And if you look at who is getting COVID and where, one of the populations or groupings of people that are not, flight attendants and pilots.
Yeah, seriously.
I feel so safe on these planes. So I just also don't want people to feel limited in their travel because of the plane or the flight, the travel.
They ask you to see that negative COVID test before boarding. I flew Ethiopian too, and that's what they did. Even though Tanzania didn't require it, going into Ethiopia required it. So they still asked everybody to have one. Yeah. And even on the flight, everybody, you could take off your mask to eat food and to drink coffee and things like that. But everybody was being handed, sanitizing wipes. Everybody had their own hand sanitizer anyway. I did.
Yeah.
And in the bathrooms, they had plenty of soap and sanitizer. And it was just, you feel it feels kind of ad nauseum, but at the same point, it's that it's like, why do we take malaria pills? It's just to anti-malarials. It's to get that. I don't think I'm going to get malaria, but it's just that peace of mind. You know what I mean?
Well, and for us in Colorado, we wanted to go to New Mexico, and we literally can't drive 6 hours from our home in Boulder to our friend's home in Santa Fe. To go to New Mexico is a 14-day quarantine.
No,
really? Wants to do a drive from Colorado to Death Valley, and he was looking at places he wanted to go to, like Antelope Canyon. You know what? It's closed. It's almost easier to get from the US to Africa, and more is open and available to you there than even some of the things in our own backyard.
Oh my God, I had no idea about that in New Mexico. That's crazy. It's wild. Well, we're going to end up closing pretty soon. Do you have any parting comments to guests that you'd like to say before?
I'm sure I've said it in one way or another, but I think that this year has taken a tremendous amount out of all of us in one way or another. And I think that the best way to regain sense of self, peace, serenity, clarity is to go to Africa. Just to spend that time, however it works for you. It is safe to get to. And it is truly, for me right now, the only place that I want to be. And I think that people will find a lot of rejuvenation from being there too.
Yep.
So just go.
Yep. Totally agree with you. Thank you so much for coming on. This has been fun.
It has. Thanks, Justin. A pleasure.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Smart Aspirations. Justin Huff is the manager of Swaggy Swan Travel. For all travel-related inquiries, please visit www.swaggyswan.com. That's www.swaggyswan.com. And click Inquiries. Have a stupendous day, and we'll see you next week.